flattering to be talked of that way, but really, I am a civil rights attorney. I make no apologies for that. I'm a former attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Thurgood Marshall started LDF, and Thurgood Marshall was Supreme Court Justice, Solicitor General of the United States, head of LDF, and on his gravestone it says, Civil Rights Advocate. That's what I do. We've been asked to speak about new partners for smart growth and environmental justice, and there are the various ways of describing this work: smart growth, equitable development, safe, healthy, equitable, and prosperous communities, ecosystem services, and so on. We think of it as healthy green land use, equitable development, and planning by and for the community. As we've heard, this week is the 20th anniversary of the President's Order on Environmental Justice. This year is also the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, including Title VI, which we rely on extensively. This year is the 50th anniversary of the War on Poverty. This year is the 60th anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. And there's a lesson in here. First of all, the 60s were great. Second, these are great times too because we have these tools and 50 years of experience in how to use them. It does take a movement, the civil rights movement, the environmental justice movement, what we call the green justice movement. We think of the environmental justice movement as the environmental arm of the civil rights movement. We think of the green justice movement as the parks arm of the environmental justice and civil rights movement. And indeed, following Brown v. Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court held that it abolished separate but equal doctrine in public schools. But the same reasoning, abolishing separate but equal, applied to parks, beaches, playgrounds. So when people ask me how are parks a civil rights issue, to me it's a simple answer. But that's what I will speak about today, is how parks are an environmental justice, civil rights issue, equitable development issue, fill in the blank issue. And I'll do that by unpacking the story behind this picture, which is also on the cover of the workshop book today. This is what is the site of what is now Los Angeles State Historic Park, formerly known as the Cornfield. This was the flagship project of the city project. We started the city project in the year 2000. This was our first project. It was an abandoned rail yard at the time, and now it's a state park. And this is a seminal moment in the history of Los Angeles and in the greening of Los Angeles, and a milestone in the environmental justice and civil rights movements. Because in 2000, Andrew Cuomo sent a 2-page letter to the city of LA saying he would not issue a penny of federal subsidies for a proposed warehouse project on that site unless there was a full environmental review that considered the park alternative and considered the impact on people of color and low-income people. And he did so citing the President's Order on Environmental Justice and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and he acted in response to an administrative complaint filed by diverse allies, including the city project. And that's been a watershed moment for 2 reasons. One, it inspired the green justice movement in LA, which has gone on to create about 1,000 acres of urban green space in LA. And if you know LA, there's not that many places for parks. So that's an accomplishment. But second, today, the federal government is doing exactly the same thing of citing the President's Order on Environmental Justice and the Army Corps of Engineers report for greening the LA River, and the National Park Service, Healthy Parks, Healthy People US plan and proposal for a national recreation area in the San Gabriels. EPA had a critical role in this. Lisa Jackson went to Los Angeles and declared the LA River a traditional navigable water, which opened the way for the Army Corps of Engineers to study how to revitalize the LA River. So that's the end story where we are today, and I'll back into how we got there. We put people first. These are our clients and allies, members of the Anahuac Youth Sports Association. They started about 15 years ago with 15 players, enough for a soccer team. Today they have 3,000 children, plus their families and friends in Northeast LA. When we first started working with them, they had no place to play. This is Rigoberta Menchú, a Nobel Peace Laureate from Guatemala. I am an immigrant. I am from Guatemala. And Rigoberta Menchú came to our Peace and Justice tournament and praised the work of Anahuac in creating soccer fields and places to play at schools and parks as a way of giving children hope, saying no to violence. They are our clients, but they are also our organizing arm, if you will. They had no place to play. There were several abandoned rail yards nearby. We asked them, do you want warehouses there? They said, no, we want a park. Organizing is finding out what people want and finding collective ways of getting it. That's part of this story. That's part of the lessons of the environmental justice movement, organizing. We studied the history of access to parks and recreation in Los Angeles. In 1930, the Olmsted brothers, the sons of the great Frederick Law Olmsted, who created the field of landscape architecture in the US. Central Park was his first park. He said Prospect Park in Brooklyn was his best park, but he's wrong. Central Park is the best park in the US, maybe the world. His sons in 1930 with a local firm published what's appropriately called Parks, Playgrounds, and Beaches for the Los Angeles region. And they proposed creating a network of parks, schools with 5 acres or more playing fields, transportation to connect everything, uniting it to the Angeles National Forest and other large tracts of land. But in 1930, it was published at the height of the Depression. Only 200 copies were printed, enough for the Blue Ribbon Commission that commissioned it. And it was dead on arrival. We had our GIS experts create a contemporary version, but we went another step. And we analyzed where the parks are and where the people are. And this map tells the story of why parks are a civil rights issue. Children of color living in poverty with no access to a car have the worst access to parks. They have the worst access to schools with 5 acres or more playing fields. They suffer from the highest levels of childhood obesity and diabetes from lack of places for physical activity and healthy eating. And they are the most at risk for crimes, drugs, and violence. The red hotspots are the places where those children live. The green spaces are the green spaces. And you can see there's virtually no connection. If you live in a red hotspot, you don't live near a park. If you live near a park, you tend to be disproportionately non-Hispanic and white and wealthy. Indeed, this is the type of data collection and analysis that EPA and other federal agencies and recipients of federal funding have to do to analyze the impact of their actions on people of color and low-income people. GISing has revolutionized the ability to gather data, collect it, analyze it, publish it. We did this as part of the campaign for the park at the cornfield. We've done it at the statewide level as well. The red hatched hotspots are the combined areas that are park poor, less than 3 acres of parks per 1,000 residents, income poor, below $48,000 a year, $48,000 median household income per year, and disproportionately populated by people of color. The abandoned rail yard that was the cornfield is in one of those red hot spots in LA, one of the most park-poor areas in the state. And today it is Los Angeles State Historic Park. The Los Angeles Times called the community victory there a heroic monument and a symbol of hope. The Times reported that diverse allies mounted a civil rights challenge that said the absence of parks and green space in inner city communities was part of a continuing legacy of discriminatory land use housing policies. Andrew Cuomo withheld federal funding unless there was full environmental review that considered the park alternative, considered the impact on people of color. What does that require? What does it require to do the compliance analysis under the President's order and under Title VI? Or as a matter of good planning for smart growth? It comes down to 5 simple questions. 1, what are you planning to do? 2, how will the benefits and burdens be distributed? 3, what are the alternatives? 4, did you include people of color and low-income people in the planning process? And 5, do you have an implementation plan to ensure that the benefits and burdens are distributed fairly? That's what Title VI boils down to. That's what the President's order boils down to. That's what the Federal Transit Administration required of BART in the Bay Area and withheld federal funding because BART did not do that analysis. That's the first step. What is the impact on people of color? That is the first step under the Title VI regulations. 1, are there numeric disparities? And you can show that through data collection, GISing, statistical analysis, anecdotal evidence. 2, are the disparities justified by business necessity? And in LA, obviously not. There's no reason why there should be parks in communities that are rich and white and none in low-income communities. That's not an accident of unplanned growth or a free market in land use or access to parks. It is a result of the continuing history and legacy of discriminatory land use. Black folks, Latinos couldn't live on the West Side because of racially restricted housing covenants. People of color had to live in South Central LA or east of the LA River. And 3, are there less discriminatory alternatives? And our answer was, a park is less discriminatory than warehouses, given that history. The history is quite dramatic in LA. We told our lawyers, if we can't prove discrimination in LA, we have no business being lawyers. We should become plumbers. We have no business being civil rights attorneys. Racially restricted housing covenants were quite explicit in LA. We don't bring up the history to be confrontational or to play the race card, as some people say. Because the United States Supreme Court says the way you prove intentional discrimination now through circumstantial evidence is what are the impacts on people of color? The map. 2, what is the history of discrimination? Historical evidence like that photograph. 3, are there substantive irregularities? Yes, you would expect a park, not warehouses, in the last vast open space in downtown LA. 4, are the departures from procedural norms? Yes. There was supposed to be an environmental impact report and there was none. You wouldn't do that in Beverly Hills. You can't do that in downtown LA. That is how simple the analysis is. So we are here to praise EPA, not to bury EPA. But you can get on with the process of processing administrative complaints under President's order in Title VI. That's the structure. That is the LA River. Very quickly, my time is up. The white box is a FedEx warehouse, but immediately north of it, above it, that is now the Los Angeles State Park at Taylor Yard. We did a similar approach with the children of Anahuac, stopped commercial development there in favor of a park. They planted the trees for their own park on Earth Day. They also created a soccer field to play on. This comes back to Lisa Jackson and declaring the river a navigable water that opened the way for the Army Corps of Engineers to publish a study last September, the receiving comment now, to green 11 miles of the LA River. All that green space you see there on the right, that is an artist's rendering. Above it is Cría de Los Angeles State Park at Taylor Yard. At the bottom is Sonia Sotomayor High School. That is there now. That's putting the Olmsted vision to work. Parks, schools, pools, joint use, greening the LA River, multi-benefit projects. Charles Lee and Bernice Miller-Travis visited LA, did a site visit. This is the Baldwin Hills Park in the heart of African American Los Angeles. The largest urban park design in the US in over a century. We stopped a power plant and a garbage dump there in favor of saving that park. We also fought the oil company, which has an adjoining oil field. It is now the most heavily regulated urban oil field in the US. In the process of working with the community there, we also met homeowners and concerned citizens of South Central Los Angeles who told us, by the way, there's been a really bad sewer odor in this neighborhood for 30 years. One mother told me, I know it's been 30 years because the first time my son complained about it, he was 4 and he's 34 now. Working arm in arm with US EPA, we filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles and settled it for $2 billion with a B. And again, we were on the same side as EPA under the Clean Water Act against the city of LA. That again is a best practice example of US EPA putting the president's order on environmental justice to work. It's all interconnected. Money from that settlement goes to multi-benefit projects to clean up sewer water, clean up the stormwater that runs into the LA River, create tanks under parks to capture rainwater in light of the worst drought in Los Angeles and in California in the past 500 years. I have 1 minute left. This is a National Park Service proposal for the National Recreation Area in the San Gabriels. Again, the Army Corps of Engineers, the National Park Service explicitly rely on our mapping, on our data analysis. They recognize and explicitly say there are unfair disparities in access to parks, number 1. Number 2, based on race, color, and national origin. Number 2, this creates health disparities. And number 3, parks have an obligation to address these disparities. That's how parks are a civil rights issue. Thank you to the federal government for taking the work of LA and catapulting it to the national level. Thank you.